Hi everyone, my name is Nick Karn. This is my AEP 800 Module 5, Barriers to Web 2.0. So just real quickly, the summary. There's two things that struck out to me. I teach at a Title I school, and so all of our students receive free and reduced lunch, and our access to internet is decent, but we frequently have issues with our internet. Either it is inaccessible or it just is slow, that there's no point in using it. And so a lot of our teachers shy away from using it just because of those reasons, and it can be frustrating. And actually, our students prefer to use their hotspots sometimes just because it's more reliable than their actual internet. The second way these articles really applied to me was the video that explained that primary schools are usually better at using technology, or at least implementing it, just because they have more consistency and they have more exposure to their own students. And consistency is the big thing that struck out to me, just because as a secondary teacher, I only see my students an hour a day, so I mean, it's not an excuse, because I think that I can still apply effective, innovative technology, but it is easier if I had more time. So that is a challenge that we face, and really just, I think it is important that we have consistency among teachers, especially at the secondary level, just because it'll help us provide more in depth, because they're not only hearing it from me, they're hearing it from all their other teachers as well. So for example, we use Google Classroom. So it's a little easier just because if we're all using Google Classroom, it does help our students kind of just streamline it a little better. However, I do understand the argument that you can use different applications as well, and because when they go off to college, different professors use different systems, perhaps, and I think that that is important, that they have more of a wild card with they're the jack of all trades. But I mean, it's just I'm always a fan of consistency. So just knowing that they have the same system from class to class, at least it is a little more efficient in my opinion. But I can see the argument for the other side as well. Do you feel the digital divide can be resolved? I think so. It is going to take a while though. It's a complicated issue. We need. I think it's easier said than done. We need private companies and the government to work together. But like I said, that's kind of hard to do. I think if we rely solely on one though, it's going to be an issue, because private companies will, they're all about bottom line. So if it's too expensive to put in Ethernet, or fiber optics in a certain area, it's going to take. They're not really going to do it because it's going to cost more than they're actually going to make. And if they do implement it, it's going to be expensive, and no one's going to buy it. So I do understand their side. But the government, it is taxpayer dollars. You have to go through legislation, and it takes time. And so if there's some way we can come to an agreement, maybe that government can help out private companies if they want to do these things, maybe give them some sort of break. I mean, it just depends on what you want to work out there, but really, we have to do something, and I can only focus on what we can do. So as educational leaders, we need to advocate for schools and libraries to have better educational resources, and that includes the internet. And I think that that's important. And it's just not just internet access, but also high quality internet. Make sure it's fast enough to where we can stream videos that are educational. Make sure that we have access to scholarly resources and all these other things to make sure that our students are exposed to as much as they can in order to increase their education. So what skill sets do I feel that are important prior to graduation? The first one is the ability to collaborate and achieving a common goal without or with technology. Problem solving using technology, which I think we need to focus on more as far as that, and then also just hands-on learning as well. I don't ask my students what they want to major in. I ask them what problems they want to solve, and I think that really kind of helps us. And that's not my idea. I heard that from one of my avid superiors, and I think that was pretty cool. And so I ask my students that a lot, and it's kind of cool to see when they come up with problems they want to solve. Well, then we work on that and say, hey, that's a problem you want to solve. What can you do with that? And then we have conduct proper research using scholarly sources and cite those sources. You'd be surprised how much of our teachers don't make our students do that, and it's something we need to work on. Number 4 is critical thinking, and that can look like a lot of different things, but just getting to that deeper level of thinking. 5 is identifying bias in sources. As much information is out there, we need to make sure that they can identify that bias and make sure that they can come up with their own opinions. 6 is writing papers in different formats, so APA, MLA, all that good stuff, but also just understanding that there needs to be paragraphs, it needs to be educational looking, no Comic Sans font on some things, and make sure they're using a professional font. which leads us to number 7 is professionalism and etiquette. And so that can look like different things across cultures, but I think that the main thing that we try to teach our students is to make eye contact, handshakes, all that good stuff, but also etiquette. Even know how to conduct yourself in a meeting and all that good stuff. And then finally, financial literacy. Just teaching kids how to use money, how do they track their spending, how do they invest, how do they avoid debt as much as possible. We don't even have a class on financial literacy, and it's something we're kind of striving for. But I think it would be important to teach students that as well. What impact has the global economy had on our personal use of the internet? Well, I grew up in an interesting time. I went from a lot of us grew up with no internet to all of a sudden having all the internet we ever wanted, and it just keeps growing. I remember the time in middle school where I have to use the payphone, call my mom, pick me up, and then by the time I got to high school, I could just use my smartphone. I could also access internet and Facebook. So it was very quick for me, and it was interesting to see the progression. But I think the big thing that I use the internet for would probably be to teach my students every day. I think that's the main reason why I use it, and there's so much good stuff out there, especially when it comes to videos, articles, all that, and also access to new ideas and information from people all around the world. That includes researching new ideas. So TED Talks, books, downloading books online. There's just so much out there. And then communicate with my friends and family who are spread around the world, all the way from London to Texas. They're all over. So it's not the same as in the interpersonal way, but it is better than nothing. And that's also something that I think that the use of internet has improved, is that communication. So what technology training do I still need? Well, as an avid teacher, I try to teach it all. I try to teach my students as much as I can when it involves technology, but sometimes it's a bad thing because I tend to be too spread out. So I need to be more concrete in my lessons based around technology, and I need to link them to standards some way. I also want to use more interactive technology in my classroom. So for example, I'd like to use a tablet more. I'd like to be more mobile. I'm pretty mobile as it is, but I always have to go back to my laptop quite frequently. I have a mouse and clicker, but I always have to go back for some reason, and it's just the split screen thing works, but I'd have to go back to take attendance. I'd have to go back to switch screens. Those are all things that I would kind of want to avoid. So by having a tablet, I can still be mobile. I can still be talking, but I can still be writing on the screen. I can still be interacting with the screen. And that's just something I kind of want a training on to see how other teachers do that. So are we equipped with 21st century technology? Yes, but we have a lot of work to do. So every student has a laptop. When they're a freshman, they're issued it and they get to keep it, and if they graduate from our school, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately, the laptops are kind of low quality, so very rarely do our students even keep, they do keep it, but they end up going to college and buying a new computer anyway just because it's so out of date. It's hard to complain just because of that, and there's some schools that don't have one-to-one laptops. But it is an issue just because they frequently break, they don't hold a charge, and we have a technology employee on site, but they're rarely there because they're working for the whole district. And so if we had a full-time employee, that would help. So if students do have issues with their computer, that would be useful. Many rooms have smart boards, but a lot of teachers don't use them anymore. And they actually have missing equipment a lot, and nobody knows where it goes. And that's something we need to fix, just because, for example, in my class I have a smart board, but I don't have smart pens, and I have no idea where they're at. I've reached out to the district several times to get them replaced, and I have yet to hear anything. So that's just frustrating, and it's something we can fix easily. We just need to actually make an effort to do that. So as an educational leader who wants to promote the use of instructional technology, I need to make sure the infrastructure is sufficient to my vision and goals, along with the proper support. What are the advantages of innovative practices? Well, I think it's increased exposure to new ideas, and that includes learning and teaching. Effective use of visual and auditory resources to increase instruction and learning. Better research and projects constructed by the students. More efficient collaboration. Increased access to new ideas and information. The disadvantages would be lack of training for students and teachers that may lead to insufficient instruction. Possible distractions if not used properly in the classroom. Also, if there's a lack of classroom management, there's going to be a lot of technological use that's inappropriate. Lack of consistency in programs and needs to be updated constantly to keep up with evolving technology. So have I ever experienced Problems with cyberbullying or other inappropriate internet use? Yes, unfortunately, I see it often, and all my students with cyberbullying has been carried out through social media, like every single time. I know it may happen in other ways, but from my experience, it's always been social media. And I really don't envy our students just because everything's recorded and there's really no escape when you go home. I mean, when I was growing up, you could have an issue at school, but you go home, you kind of brush it off, and you go back to school the next day, and it's usually kind of resolved in that week. Unfortunately, our students carry that stuff home with them just because they have their phone on them, they have a computer, they have a tablet, whatever it may be, and they see it and they hear it again and again. And it's not something I would want to go through. And I think that unfortunately our students cannot avoid that drama unless they just don't have a social media account. And asking them to not have a social media account is pretty crazy at this point. So 99% of my students have a social media account. And if you ask them, they all have Snapchat, Instagram. They have a Twitter and Facebook, but apparently that's for old people, which that's probably why I have one. Which that's kind of interesting because I feel like, why do you have it? It's for old people. But anyway, they don't even use it. Mostly we see Snapchat. That's mainly what we see. I've seen horrible things shared amongst my students via these sites, things that would not be said in person. So I think that social media gives them kind of a mask that they can hide behind sometimes that allows them to say things that they usually wouldn't say in person. So that's why I think it's important for us as educational leaders that we need to teach our students the importance of digital and global citizenship to the best of our abilities in order to avoid these issues. They're going to happen. I mean, it happens. So if it does happen, we need to have procedures in place to make sure that we teach our students that just because you say it online doesn't mean it's okay. And I think a lot of our students are starting to realize that just because we've had a lot of suspensions lately due to cyberbullying. And I think the more consistent we are with that, the more students will start to realize that even what they say online can be enforced at school. So that's it. That's all my assignment. I appreciate any feedback, and thank you so much. And hopefully this was meaningful in some way, and I look forward to you hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you, and have a good night.